And like that, we're off and running. Welcome back to the Krueg Show. Larry Krueger with you. We're just a couple days out until the NBA playoffs. The second season, as Charles Barkley would say, begins. The Warriors taking on the Denver Nuggets in the first round. And I called Raymond Ritter. I said, man, we want to guess. He said, how about Kerr? I said, no, Kerr's not going to do. He said, how about Bob Myers? I said, no. He said, how about Steph? I said, no. I want Larry Harris. Get me Larry Harris. But I'm actually only half joking because I really do believe Larry's the best interview in the organization, and he's joined us for years and years on KMBR, and he's back with us on the Krueg Show to talk little Warriors and help us preview the playoff series. Larry, thanks for the time. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, it's good to see you. You know, I always favor people that have the same first name, so I'm always in good company with you. So I appreciate. It's been a while since we spoke, and anxious to get this thing started like we talked about prior to getting on the call here, but it's going to be a good series, and I'm anxious to see get this thing started on Saturday.
Well, tell people who don't know your background. Obviously, Del Harris is your father. You've spent a lifetime basically around NBA basketball. I mean, what was your first job in basketball? What year was it? And tell us, basically the quick Larry Harris story, how you got from there to where you're at right now, which is, in my opinion, the most trusted voice in the Warrior front office.
Well, it's very nice of you. I'm not sure everybody that I work with would agree with that, but I'll give you the Cliff Notes version.
Sure.
Of basically my career. So it started with my father, obviously a Hall of Famer now. I can say my Hall of Fame father.
Absolutely.
Getting inducted in September, which is going to be great. But it started in 1987 and started as an advanced scout. And he was coaching the Milwaukee Bucks at the time. And I was living in Dallas at the time. And it just turned out that he needed somebody kind of in this region. And a long time ago, as you would remember, NBA basketball, where they used to call it the triangle, when you'd had to come through Houston and Dallas and San Antonio, and usually called it the death triangle because you rarely ever won. But I lived in Dallas, and it was a location where it could help them out as a Midwest scout. So I started with that, did that for a few years. And then in 1990, Mike Dunleavy kind of suggested that I joined the staff. He went to the Lakers as their coach, and he was on my dad's. He was on the front of the bench with my father as an assistant coach. And so I came in at that point in 1990 full time as a video coordinator. And I did that for 7 years, and then kind of jumped up each step of the way from a scout to player personnel, then assistant general manager, and then eventually general manager for almost 5 years. And then joined the Warriors after that. To kind of finish it off, this is my 34th year in the NBA. I'll be my 14th with the Warriors. Started my first year in 08-09 with Nelly. Never coached a day in my life, not even my kids or any recreational coaching. But Nelly saw a need for someone that kind of knew personnel, and so he put me on the bench for the year 2008, 2009. Sydney, I think, was on the staff at that time. Sidney Moncrief went to China and coached. Opened up a spot. Nelly called my father, who they'd known each other for years, and asked him if there was somebody that could help him. He said, yeah, my son can help you. And I've stayed ever since. 2 owners now and a few general managers, and a lot of people that I work with that are great. I've got great ownership group. I've been elevated in a position that I never thought I'd get to, even back again. When you get fired, you never know if you're going to get back inside the electric fence. I was fortunate enough, and it's all about relationships. And for me, it really starts with Bob Myers, who I've known over 20 years. We did deals together when I was the GM of the Bucks, and so we just kept a relationship going. And I felt he was going to get on this side of the fence at one point and get out of the agent business, and he did. And I think Peter and Joe did a great job of selecting him, bringing him on as basically an assistant general manager, and then elevating him shortly after that. So that's kind of my career in a nutshell. Most of it, but 1 year I've been in the front office. I've been fortunate to run an organization, be a part of a championship organization as well. So.
You have a very keen eye for personnel, and you brought up a name that I've always had great respect for his personnel acumen, and that's Don Nelson. People think Don Nelson found Sprewell, or maybe I'm wrong by saying that. Maybe it wasn't Don Nelson. Maybe it's Ed Gregory, or maybe it's somebody like yourself, or maybe it was Larry Riley. But either Nelly or lieutenants of Nelly found Sprewell in the 20s, Hardaway in the teens, Dirk Nowitzki traded for on draft day. Um, you know, he's had a lot of success. I mean, sifting through the lottery the year Steph came out. Thank you, David Kahn, but had the wisdom to draft Steph Curry when a lot of people thought he was a tweener, classic tweener, not really, didn't have the handle for a point guard, didn't have the size for a two guard. People were kind of unsure coming out of Davidson level of competition. They saw right through that, had the conviction, made the pick. Where do you put Don Nelson? I mean, personnel, and when you know personnel, you know who's faking it and who's legit. Where do you put a guy like Don Nelson and his personnel acumen in the list of people that you've been around through the years?
Well, I can tell you this. He's a brilliant basketball mind, first and foremost. I put him and my father, George Carl, Mike Dunleavy, senior, not junior, of people that I have been around, that I know personally, that I've seen them work day in and day out. And Nelly's right up there as just one of the smartest X and O guys that I know. I would say the greatest thing about Nelly and personnel is he knew what players would work for his system. And he always talked about, give me somebody that can do something, and I can exploit that against another team. Great offensive mind. Defensively, I would say that's where my father kind of kicked in and how they kind of jive together, how it worked. But Nelly, overall, great coach from an offensive standpoint, an absolute genius. And so being with him in the draft room, Larry Riley, and that group in relationship to Steph, was the thing I would say about Nelly. He never got frazzled. The moment was never too big. And he knew what he wanted to do. He had conviction and he stuck with it. But also he would listen to the people that work for him. You get to a point like you're a Don Nelson or Phil Jackson, Greg Popovich. You probably can get to that point where, like, look, I've seen it all. I know it all. I don't really need a lot of help. And I don't know those other people because I've never spent any time with them. But I know that as far as Nelly was, he believed in the people that he hired and he listened to them, whether it was assistant coaches, whether it was Larry Riley, whether even myself or even other staff members. He values people, he values relationships, and he's a great communicator.
Let's fast forward to Saturday, beginning of Warriors Nuggets. Give me a couple thoughts on this one. I was very excited on Christmas when I watched you guys go into Phoenix and beat Phoenix, and that was without Clay, without Wiseman. And I thought, wow, by the time the playoffs roll around, the Warriors are going to be the favorite. Wiseman never made his way back. Green got hurt. Clay's been up and down. Steph's kind of had a little bit of a regression this year for whatever reason. And it's just, and yet still, with all those things going on, the Warriors still have the third best record in the league. And now here come the Nuggets and arguably the MVP of the league and Nikola Jokic. What's that challenge going to be like? Give me a couple thoughts on how you think these two teams match up.
Well, I mean, if you look at the stats in the 4 games, obviously almost dead heat, right? I mean, we averaged the same amount of points. I think the first game was a low scoring game. And then after that, we got up into the 115s, 30s in 2 of the next 3 games. So I anticipate scoring is not going to be an issue. I think the biggest thing for us, if I had to look at it 2 ways from a perspective from the coaching side of it, I would say the things that concern me the most are rebounding, just because of their size up front and what they'll start with. I think the last time we played them, you had Gordon, Green, and Jokic, so their size is a concern. I think the other thing that I worry about, and that's the rebounding part of it, and then just the other part is just the fouling. I thought that during the series, and I call them the 4-game series that we played, I thought we just fouled too much and undisciplined. So those 2 things, is just as far as keys to me, are probably 2 things that I'm looking at. But as far as us versus them, I think Draymond, I think I was listening to one of his podcasts recently, and he mentioned about picking your poison. He didn't say that exactly that same way, but that's kind of what it is I think we have to decide as an organization, what are we willing to give up? Is it going to be Jokic getting his triple doubles and holding down what would be called the others, whether that's Monty Morris, Will Barton, Jeff Green, Aaron Gordon, DeMarcus Cousins, Rivers, Highland, JaMychal Green, keeping those guys below their average? Or are we going to take the ball out of Jokic's hands, eliminate him from getting triple doubles, and see if these other guys can beat you? So I think that's the challenge for Steve and his staff, is you can't give them all of it. If you give all of it, then you're not going to win. And we know that. I think for the positive, the real positive side for us is they can't grab one game film and know exactly what we're going to throw out there game one. Draymond never played in the series. I think Clay played twice. And there isn't any recent film to watch. Okay, how are Steph and Clay and Draymond playing together? There's no film of that either. So there's an advantage that we have, that there's nothing that they can see. And what they'll see game one is going to be different than games 2 through 5, 6, 7, however long this series takes. So I'm optimistic, because though our continuity hasn't been there all year because of, as you stated, injuries to our roster throughout the year, I think the advantage, and I told our guys early on, and I'm saying guys, front office, when we met in September as a staff, I would never bet against our 3 guys, no matter what it takes to get in the playoffs. Did I think we were going to have the 3rd best record in the NBA? No, I did not. Just knowing what we had coming into the season, right? Wiseman unknown. Clay certainly wasn't going to be back. But to finish, as you stated, 3rd best record in the league, probably could have been 1 or 2 had we have been healthy all year. I'm optimistic because these 3 guys have been through the grind. They understand what it takes. And if they're healthy and able to play, I wouldn't bet against them in any series.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Let's talk about Jokic for a second, because, he's incredible. He really is incredible. I mean, he can pass. The pass that he made to Monty Moore for the big 3 was a genius pass. We everybody in the media focused on Steph and the closeout and how he left the perimeter shooter in a situation where a 3 beats you, but to me, the focus should on that play been on Jokic and the unbelievable last-second pass. He drew Steph in and then threw a perfect perimeter pass to Morris, who knocked down the 3. Jokic went in the 2nd round. Why is that, Lair? What did you think of him coming out? How come a guy with that kind of skill and that kind of feel? I mean, that's what when I see him, the word that comes to mind is feel. He's got a tremendous feel for the game. How come that wasn't, did not come across to NBA people, or was his conditioning at a point where it just kind of kind of clouded the scouting report? What did you think of him coming out, and why did he go in the 2nd round?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. The first thing is the conditioning. It's interesting. Him and Marc Gasol kind of fell into the same path. Their conditioning and what they look like, and obviously being international. So there's always a hesitancy, and I'm just saying the league in general. Their teams, Denver did a great job. They're one of the few teams that have really been aggressive with international players. You mentioned Nelly, international players. They have that flavor. A lot of teams, they'll go over there and scout, but that's just to cover it. Like, hey, we've seen him. So when you went over to see Jokic specifically, you noticed the conditioning was a concern. And then you start to seeing what's going on the floor, and you see the skill level, but you're like, okay, how is he going to play in an NBA game? Like, is the speed of the game going to be too much, even though he does all these great things? And then is it going to translate? Does he want to come over? Does he love the game? How much does he truly want to be in the NBA and really want to be great? But I give Denver credit. They had him and Nurkic at the same time, and they made the right choice, right? But I don't think it was a slam dunk that he certainly wasn't going to be to this level, because what you saw initially was a guy who had talent, but there was a lot of things he had to overcome, and the conditioning was a huge, huge, huge factor.
Yeah. And you could have argued early on that Nurkic might have been the better of the 2. I thought when I saw them the first time that Nurkic was the better of the 2. And now here we are a couple of years later. Nurkic is nice, but yes, Jokic is an MVP.
Yeah. And I would say this, Larry, the thing about that is, and I think this is true with all fans that are listening in and people that love the Warriors, there's one thing about living with a guy every day. What we see on TV, we can watch games and everything, but behind the scenes, what's their work ethic like? Are they there early, stay late? Are they getting all their rehab done? Do they take care of injuries when they get injured? How are they dealing not only with the players, but the coaching staff and the external staff? I mean, there's just so many things. And I don't know the difference between those 2 guys, but I guarantee you Denver knew a lot more than we knew when they were looking at both those entities, because you're absolutely right. If you go on production, you would have said, well, they're just going to get the guy that produces more on the floor, right? And it's not necessarily that case all the time.
Yeah. Michael Malone played Hacka-Looney in one of those games and kind of forced Kevon off the floor. Kevon's a key guy for you guys now because of the Wiseman injury. Do you anticipate that Malone will try that tactic again?
I don't know. I will say this. I know the game you're speaking to specifically. Uh, I thought Kevon was completely worn down. I thought he was physically. I mean, to take him on the amount of minutes you have to. I mean, Kevon is a battler. He played 82 games. He's a warrior. There's no question about it, literally and figuratively. But I thought he was physically beaten up that game, and he could barely stand at the free throw line, much less he couldn't have punted it in if they had just put it, if they had made it the beach. I thought he was physically exhausted. So
yeah,
having said that, I think you've got time in between games. I think Kevon will be able to make free throws. I don't think that's going to be an issue. But again, depending on how the game goes, if we have to look back at the 5-year run to the championships, Draymond usually finished games at center. So do I anticipate Kevon being on the floor? Maybe. But if I had to go with history, if history has anything to do with how this thing goes, if Kevon is playing well and he's doing some things against Jokic that looks like it's a positive down the stretch, he may keep him in. But I wouldn't be surprised if Draymond finishes the game that way at center. And then we play out of it, however that's going to look, how we're going to guard Jokic, because obviously Draymond's not going to guard him straight up on the low block down there either.
Internally, are there regrets that you guys didn't add a big man at the deadline or through the buyout market? Now that you kind of know that you're not going to have Wiseman, or were you guys ever close to adding another big man? And do you have any regrets about that?
Well, I will say this, and I think this goes for everybody that's listening. I mean, certainly Bob and our staff, in addition to Steve and his staff as well, met many, many hours about our roster throughout the year. And as we got closer to the trade deadline and even closer to the buyout market, we talked about that position specifically. Certainly up to the trading deadline, we were optimistic about James coming back.
Right.
When we got closer to the buyout market, obviously we knew kind of what was happening with James and what was going on there. I can say that in totality as a whole group, that yes, it's something that we talked about. We mentioned a few guys. We sent in rankings. We spent hours discussing our whole roster, not just even bigs. Do we need to add another guard? Do we need to add another small forward? Just based on injuries and where everything was at this point. And we just decided that continuity was important. I think Steve had a very strong conviction about where his group was and felt good about the roster they had going into the playoffs. And, a lot of times you have to really rely on where your coaches and what they think of where your team is at. They have the pulse of it, though we see it. We're not in the locker room and in every meeting and film session. And so when it came down to it, we just decided that. So I would say no regrets, but certainly I don't want the fans to think that we certainly thought about it. We knew that this would end up that we'd probably have to play 3 or 4 big guys to win an NBA championship. But we like our team the way it is, and we're just going to have to do it kind of differently and rebound as a group and be physical. And I think we'll be able to do all those things. And we have, and we'll just have to continue to do it in the series.
Jordan Poole has had an incredible month of basketball, and he's had a career ascension. And I know there are no shortcuts, and this kid's put in the work. And I think all Warrior fans understand that. We've heard time and time again, first guy in, last guy out of the gym. He's working on his game. We just saw him the other night at the Giants game with a couple of his buddies, and he's looking like he's in a real good place mentally and emotionally as this series begins. But it's a different level of basketball. Talk to us a little bit about Poole's ascension in your mind outside of his ridiculous work ethic. Is there something that he's done to his game? How have you seen his game evolve? Because when you guys drafted him, I saw a guy that looked like a volume shooter, almost like a guy you could say, well, that guy's a gunner, and he's going to be kind of low percentage. And yet he's worked at it. He's gotten higher percentage and better and better. And this last month, he got to a level that I didn't even know that he had in him. So give me your thoughts on the ascension of his game.
Well, again, you have to mention the work ethic first, and I won't delve into much more than what you've led into in the sense that between his first and second year, I think he realized, do I want to be an NBA player that has a 10 or 12-year career, or do I want to be out of this league in 3 or 4 years? His first year, and again, was rough for him, and he would tell you that. But as he would tell you that summer between his first and second year, he decided to like, look, I need to get stronger. I need to start working on my shot and maybe not take tough contested bad shots and learn how to play within this system and the flow the way that Steve likes to play. And so I think his work ethic in the offseason was huge. And then you come to the bubble and then he gets a chance to play down there. And I think that's where his confidence exploded. But if I had to put everything in a nutshell for Jordan, why the ascension is maturity. And I think that that's probably the biggest thing for him. He's matured as a person. He's matured as a player. He is not as emotional as he was early on. I think he wanted everything to happen so quickly for him. I think he's got a chance to be around Steph and Clay and understanding what the work ethic meant. Like, yeah, I work hard, but this is a different level of work. Then finding his shot and finding ways to score and be effective and efficient, which allowed him to be on the floor. Now, Steve would probably tell you that defensively is probably the biggest area that he needs to improve upon and has. We still continue to work on that part of the floor with him. But, if COVID / injuries to our roster this season, it's really opened up what we saw as scouts at Michigan was a guy that could play with the basketball and be an efficient player as a secondary ball handler. And so with all the things that were going on and all the injuries, and especially Clay not starting the season, it gave him a chance not to just be, as you stated, a volume shooter. It gave him a chance to be a playmaker. When Steph went off the floor, can he do more things and see what Steph does? And so Steve has given him a lot of a rope this year, especially the last half of the season, to be able to be more of a creator. His assists are up. Obviously, if you look at the Denver series, he's on, there's certain guys like Kuminga's on their scouting report because he's played well, right? But Poole is definitely at the top of their list. Now they've got Steph and Clay and Draymond, but then Poole's right below them. I was looking at the stats. I didn't even realize this. In the 3 games, he shot 61% from 3. I guarantee you somebody's going to stay close to him. Like, there's just a rhythm that he had played, especially in the 3 games that he played against Denver. And what he did in the month of March from the 3-point line was ridiculous. So I think the greatest thing for us as a front office will be an evaluation of Jordan in the playoffs. Certainly he's a guy that we want to keep long-term, but now that the regular season's over, now that everybody gets to scout you and it's just you versus them, and they're going to take away his strengths, to see the growth of Jordan's game is going to be something that me personally, as well as the rest of us, we're going to watch all our guys, but him becoming a free agent here in the next, 18 months will be very interesting to see how he does as a focal point in his first playoff series.
Yeah. Larry, where are you with Wiggins? He had a phenomenal first half. He made the All-Star team. In the second half, we didn't see quite the same player. Is that, because of the introduction of Clay and some other players, or did you see any regression from first half to the second half? How would you compare the year that Wiggins had first half, second half? Because it seemed like almost like 2 different players at times.
Yeah. I don't know so much that as I would say 2 different players. I would just say things changed with Clay coming back. I think there was a freedom and a flow that he was playing with in the first part of the season up till the All-Star game. He was a focal point of things that we were doing. I think his passion was there. I think defensively he was on target every night. We needed him. He was accountable, never missed a game. And then we get to the second half of the season and things just kind of changed a little bit. Clay, we needed to integrate him a little bit more. And then maybe we went a little bit away from really showcasing him like we did early on in the season, trying to kind of get into more of a rhythm with everybody, whether it's Otto Porter and Iguodala. And so I don't know if he had lost his rhythm a little bit because he just wasn't getting the number of attempts. And I'm not looking at the numbers exactly, but I would just say the flow of the game slowed down a little bit for him. And he wasn't as aggressive. And I don't know if we went to him exclusively like we did early on. But having said that, when he's been good, we've been almost impossible to beat. So again, you talk about Jordan Poole. I'm anxious to see him, and I think all of us are. How's he going to play, and how's he going to find his way in the playoffs where it's possession basketball? I'm hoping we play fast and try and score as much as we can, because I think that's where he excels in the open floor or down on the block against mismatches. But I assume Steve will use him like he has all year, take advantage of mismatches, and I hope to see him aggressive, making threes, and being a pest out there defensively on the perimeter.
Where is Clay? I mean, we he obviously had a ridiculous couple of years with injuries, and man, it was great to see him come back. And we've seen glimpses of the old Clay, but you've got to have a professional opinion. Where where are you with Clay and his return? Is he 80% back? Is he 90% back? How would you kind of term what you've seen thus far from him?
Well, I would say early on, it was rusty. It kind of put it in three segments. I think early on he was rusty. I think in the middle part was kind of rushing it, was kind of forcing his game. And I would say the third part of it, the latter part now, I think he's found his rhythm. I think his legs are back. I think three of his last three games that he played in, he's averaged over 30 points. I would tell you, knowing him, he would tell you that he's 100%. So I would never put a number on him, but I can say this: where I think he's at is, I was concerned, me personally, more about where he was going to be defensively, because he takes great pride in being a two-way player. You know, you'd ask him when he was healthy prior to all these injuries, he was the best two-way player in the league. I agree with that, and I don't think it was close. And I like Drew Holiday, but as far as a two-way player, he's as good as it gets. So there's a pride factor that he has. I've seen him now taking on the challenge of guarding perimeter players. And I think he's doing a much better job defensively, staying down, keeping guys in front of him, not getting beat so quickly off the dribble. So I think his defense is further along than I would have anticipated. I've never worried about him offensively. The thing that would be interesting to watch as we get into the playoff series, I think especially in the last two games, he was not hunting shots. So to me, the one word I would just be with Clay is consistency. Just be consistent. He doesn't need to hunt shots. He doesn't need to take tough shots anymore, because Draymond will be back. He'll find him, and the ball will always come back to him. And I think in the first half of his return, I think he was just trying to find his rhythm and taking shots, whether they were good shots, bad shots. He was taking any shot. But I think now he's settled into, I'm in a rhythm. My consistency is getting better. And I anticipate that he's going to be the Clay of old, in the sense of, you know, when he's open, he's going to make every shot. And then when he's not open, he's moving the ball, cutting, and then, you know, replacing himself to get a better shot. So I don't know if I'd answer your question percentage wise, but I would say he's much further along than I would have thought, just from the two injuries that he sustained.
Yeah, I mean, it is such a rhythm game for sure, and you could see exactly what you described. He just didn't have his rhythm early, but he seems to be getting it back, and I'm really eager to see what he looks like at this next stage. How about Kuminga and Moody? Do you think they'll be part of Steve's rotation? I love we've seen glimpses of both these guys, and I love what I'm seeing. Moody's like an old soul. I mean, he's 19, but you wouldn't know it by the way he plays. He seems like he's in total control. And Kuminga, it just seems like when he puts it on the deck and he starts going to the hole, he's got such long arms and such an ability to spin that he can almost move off a defender and give himself an open look. Almost, it seems like at will. He's got that kind of length and explosiveness. Do you think that what do you envision for them in the playoffs? And give me your thoughts on their rookie seasons.
Yeah. You know, the playoffs are a little bit different than the regular season. I think with those two guys, let's talk about Jonathan first. I think with him, I think he's going to get an opportunity, but I think he'll have a short rope. And what I mean by that is, you know, you've got Iguodala, and you've got Otto Porter, and you've got Draymond, and you've got Clay, and you've got Wiggins. So you've got a lot of guys with playoff experience that Steve probably trusts in a playoff series. So that doesn't mean that Jonathan won't get an opportunity. It just means that that opportunity may not be what it was in the regular season. And looking at the stats against Denver, you know, he averaged 22 minutes against them, and I think he averaged 14 points a game. That's a regular season performance. In the playoffs, I could see Steve put him in the game, see what he does. And if it's something positive, you know, he's going to leave him in there. But if there's something that goes awry, you know, just because of inexperience and not being in there. I was watching some earlier playoff series on Tuesday and Wednesday. And multiple times the announcers are like, these guys are playing so fast. It's their first time in the playoffs, these young guys. And I just think that's a natural reaction. They want to go so fast. And in the playoffs, that's not the way it is, because every possession matters. So I could see where Steve, he's trying to shorten the rotation and deciding Jonathan has earned the minutes to play in a playoff series. How can I get him in there? And how long can I keep him in? So I'm hoping if Jonathan gets in there, that he plays within the flow of what we're trying to do, and the points and the success will come to him. For us as a front office, the last half of the season with John was tremendous, right? I mean, how can you not be excited about the future of this kid? I mean, I would say once he figures it out, right? He's like a young kid. Once he figures it out, watch out, right? I mean, he just does things that most people dream about and only play on 2K, right? I mean, they just,
right.
He's like video game stuff that he does. His explosiveness to the rim out of pick and roll, one dribble, he gets a foot in the paint and his body's in the rim. And it's just not natural, right? You see it and you just want to replay it and go, he just didn't do that. Now, speaking with Moody, I think it'll be a little bit tougher for him. I know Steve and the staff really likes him. And like you said, Old Soul is exactly who he is. Could you plug and play him in a game? Sure. But again, if Steph's healthy and you've got Clay and you've got Jordan, you've got Gary Payton, all of a sudden, where does Moses fit into that whole lineup of things? So I just think it's situational. Again, you've got Damian Lee in there. So, who's played who actually, Steve trusts as well. So when you start expanding your roster that much into the playoffs, that's a lot of guys to find a lot of minutes, and continuity is going to be so important. So I could see Steve shortening it. And does that mean that Moses gets kind of shut out? Maybe, maybe not. It depends how a series goes or a game particularly goes. It could be foul trouble, could be an injury. So if I was Moses, I would be ready. I may not play, but there could be a chance that I get in the game.
One of the more interesting parts of this year to me is that I know you guys have a great belief in your team and the people that you have on this team, not just the players, but the people. And so at the end of camp, when Draymond and Clay and Steph were at least publicly saying, hey, Avery Bradley, I'm sure there's people in that front office that are like, hey, let's listen to our guys. But you didn't necessarily listen to your guys, and you went with Gary Payton, the second. And Gary Payton has been a revelation. The Hawks game, Trae Young just stopped shooting in the fourth quarter because Gary Payton was all over him. Anybody who's dribbling the basketball can't feel comfortable if Gary Payton's in the vicinity. He is a difference-making defender with the ridiculous strength and length. And if his legs are healthy, I think he's going to be a major factor for you guys in this playoff run. Talk to us a little bit about Gary Payton, Larry, because you guys could have listened to your guys and said, yeah, we'll go with Avery Bradley. And Bradley, you could argue, is more accomplished than Gary. But Gary this year has been a difference maker on defense. And I think that was, I don't know, I don't want to say it was the most important decision of the year, but it's among the most important decisions of the year. And you guys made the right one, in my opinion, going with Gary over Bradley. Talk to us a little bit about how that thing came down.
Yeah. The one thing about organization, and you mentioned it, at the first of the question, the first part of the question you just asked is one of the things we're inclusive in everything that we do, especially when we're dealing with the roster. Yes, as a front office, Bob obviously making the ultimate decision it is a group effort. Like, present your case. Why should we add player X or player Y, or trade player X or trade player Y? And we do that same with the coaching staff. We bring them in. We ask them, look, you're with them every day. You're with them in the summer leagues and all this stuff. What do you think? And then Bob always does a great job of including our three best players and saying, with Steph, Draymond, and Clay, what do you guys think? Here's what we're thinking. We want to get your side of it. And those guys are very honest and forthright with how they feel about certain things. But I will say this, they do trust Bob and Steve in the decisions that they make. And I think in any healthy organization, you hear all the voices, but someone has to make the ultimate decision. You're going to be right sometimes, you're going to be wrong sometimes. And in this particular situation, there was a division where some people thought Avery, just like you said, experience. If we get into the playoffs, it's a guy who can guard perimeter guys. We don't know if Clay's going to be there health-wise. We need someone kind of like Kent Basemore was. He went somewhere else. We need someone that we don't have. And Steve was adamant that we need someone like that. And I will say that with Gary, what he did in the summer, what he did is just preparing himself. He did everything in the G League, everything we asked him to do. And we just felt, and I guess sometimes, you get emotions do come into play. We just felt as a staff that Gary had done everything the right way, everything we'd asked him to do. And you know what? He deserved a chance. And we just felt like, you know what? He could be a difference maker, a younger version of Avery Bradley, more athletic than Avery Bradley. And we were older, but we also knew we needed somebody that was really athletic, somebody that could add into some of our older guys that weren't as athletic. And so it really just came down to, you want a defender, somebody that's a little bit bigger, more athletic and younger, and Gary fit the bill. And look, to say we knew this was gonna happen, no. But he has been a revelation. He's been great. The only thing that's held him back is injuries, right? I mean, if he doesn't get injured, I mean, it's hard to take him off the floor because of all the things that he does. I mean, he's like, somebody asked me the other day, what position does he play? I said, I have no idea. I mean, he's like a center. He plays power forward. He guards point.
He finishes at the rim.
Right.
He can slip back door if you take your eyes off him.
Right. He sets a screen as a center. He'll bring the ball up and initiate an offense every once in a while. I mean, he's kind of a hybrid of everything. I mean, I'm glad he's ours. And he's, like I said, been a revelation. The only thing that's held him back is injuries. Love him. Love the kid. Absolutely tremendous.
I do too. And then you can see his impact on the game. And then when you add you got Draymond Green. He's a great defender. You got, Klay Thompson. He's still a very, very good defender. You add Iguodala, great defender. You add a Payton to that mix. And now all of a sudden Kuminga's his athleticism. Now you've got arms in the passing lanes and nobody's looking comfortable on the other team. Take us behind the scenes, Lair. How does the preparation change when you get to the playoffs, as opposed to you played Tuesday, you're going to play Friday, you have meetings with coaching staffs, with individual players, you're watching film. Is that process just carry straight on through to the playoffs, or how do you dial it up? How is the preparation dialed up between the regular season and the playoffs?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the credit goes to Scott Vaughn, our advanced scout, who does it all year long. So he'll have seen Denver play probably their last 5 games, as well as Utah and Dallas, not knowing who we were going to play in the last month, but I'd say the last 2 weeks focused on Utah and Denver. And basically we'll have soup to nuts, everything from player tendencies to here are their favorite plays. Here's what they like to do. And then Steve and his staff, as well as our video staff, which are very important, and our analytic group, will break down Denver analytically and the video part. And so they start prepping probably on Tuesday and start presenting things to the team, the individual tendencies, who you'll be guarding, what they like to do, what we did well, what we didn't do well, how we're going to play. So initially it'll start with, this is how we're going to approach the game offensively and defensively. Then they'll get into schemes about how they're going to do, and then they'll go into heavy video, and they'll bring in a lot of analytics to say, here's where they like to take their shots, here's where they don't, here's what we want to force, here's how we're going to guard pick and rolls, here's how we're going to guard Jokic from the 3-point line, how we're going to guard him at the elbow, how we're going to guard him in the low post, here's how we're going to be out of different situations strategically, who we're going to short, who we're going to close out short to, who we're going to run to, make sure we run them off the line. And so everything will get specific. And as we were alluding to earlier in some things, this is what Denver's doing. So we're going to force the players like, let's say, Austin Rivers, we're going to force him to go to option 2 and 3 offensively and not just give him the ability to catch and shoot a 3. Or Monty Morris, we're going to make you put it on the floor rather than you spot up and make threes. And Aaron Gordon, we're going to make you shoot from the perimeter rather than driving everything to the rim. So we're going to try and take away their strengths and bring their weaknesses out. And hopefully those weaknesses won't allow them to win series.
Do you get your hands dirty on that, or is it a different layer of scouting? Because I know you're looking at college guys, international guys. You mentioned the one advanced guy. Have you done that role, and how would you compare the two?
Yeah, I did father early on in my career, but to this level of nowadays with technology and all this stuff, obviously haven't done this to this level. So these are just things that, being around a coach for 50 years, being around in this environment, having sat through video sessions when we're in the playoff runs whether it was in Milwaukee or here, I have a tendency and a feel for what they're doing. Now they may do a little bit more here, a little bit more there, but it really is a focus on the offensive, what we want to do offensively, what we want to do defensively, what we want to take away, what we want to exploit, and then how are we going to play the pace of the game, and then adding the analytic portion, and then adding the video part to just get your points across. This is how we're going to beat this team.
This has been an incredibly informative interview. 2 last questions and we'll let you go. And we do appreciate your time. We know you're busy. We're not going to ask you specifics about the draft because we don't want you to be fined, and we don't want the organization to be fined, and we don't want you to tell any tales out of school. But the NBA draft is clear to everybody who's an NBA fan has become a much more speculative draft through the years, with players entering the league with a lot more development still required. I personally love that for you guys, because I think that when you have a speculative draft and you're one of the top teams in the league, like you guys are on a perennial basis, that you suddenly, there's guys in the 20s that are going to play, and there's guys in the 30s who may make an all-star team, and there's guys in the 40s and 50s that are going to be rotation players in the NBA. And if you're really, really good at personnel evaluation, you're going to, even despite the fact you're picking behind these teams, you're going to continue to beat them and beat them to the best players in the league. So I think if you're a good NBA team, you should love the speculative draft with college freshmen and international players who are raw, and just a whole variety of guys, as opposed to, in the 80s where the lottery was everything. And if you didn't finish in the lottery, man, you'd have to hit on maybe one guy or two guys. Now there's a dozen guys who could be big time players, or at least rotation players, who are not going to go in the lottery. So how do you, as an organization, feel about the draft today, where it's not a lock, but in some ways that can be an advantage?
Yeah. I think we've benefited from being in the lottery the last 2 years, right? Hopefully, and we're confident that James will come back and play. We're excited about what his future can bring, and I hope the fans don't get down on him. I mean, he's trying everything that he can. His body just not responding like we wanted to, but we're hopeful he'll be ready for next year, and maybe even sooner, whether that's summer league or whatever. So we're hopeful for him. I will say this, and again, I want to give our ownership group a little bit of praise here. Joe is as open-minded and involved as an owner there is, and it's a good thing. It's a great thing. And he allows a lot of dialogue. Everybody gets to speak. Doesn't matter what your title is. Bob doesn't care. Doesn't matter what your title is. He lets you do your work. And when it comes to the draft, even when we were picking 2 or picking 7 or 14, or even Jordan Poole 28 and Kavan 30 or whatever, was, we always, and people have heard this many times, we always have a draft board, but that draft board is started probably October 1st, and it gets morphed into the final one, which is probably 2 or 3 days before the draft. And so we're excited always where we're picking, because we know it's going to be an unfinished product, like you said. If you look at the draft, and again, you could look over the last 10 years, it's just freshman, sophomore, freshman, sophomore, freshman. Oh, one senior. Right. And then that's the end of the first round. Then you go to the second round, international freshman, international sophomore. I mean, so it's upside. But I think the one thing that our staff has really done a good job of is not getting confused. That's the reason you're drafting a guy, because of upside. We look at 3 things. They're never going to change. Character, number 1, has to fit our culture. It has to fit our culture. There were guys we passed on that we just felt Steve couldn't coach. Like, Steve would not want this. Draymond wouldn't want this guy around. And we're not in a position. Could we take him and absorb him? Yes, but we don't need to do that. There's a person that has as much, close to the amount of talent. We don't have to take a bad character guy. The next important thing is probably 1A and 1B is IQ. A lot of the intel that we get, and we have 2 guys, Lamont Peterson and Reggie Rankin, are 2 of the greatest intel gatherers we have. And one of the things they go out and find out is character and IQ, because you can't play for us. You can't play for Steve if you don't have a brain. I mean, you just look at our team, and you could talk about this guy's skill and this guy does that, but just look about how smart our players are, the IQ of our players, because we play a little unconventionally offensive. People will notice. We just don't run pick and rolls every time and isolate Steph all around and everybody just stand around and watch him shoot. But So we take that into consideration. And then the third thing is we do evaluate a skill. We want to be able to present to our fans, to our team, to our ownership group, that this guy's skill will allow him to play. This is what we think he can do. We believe in our player development staff that once we get somebody, we can mold them. They can get better, i.e. Jordan Poole. Kuminga will get better. Moody will get better. So we're not afraid of the youth. I think it's unfortunate we're getting a lot of these players that are unrefined, undisciplined, just lack a lot of things because they're young, not because they don't want to be great. They just don't know how to be great. But yet they think they are. They think they're ready, but they're not. So I think our foundation is good. I think our G League, what we do there, I think allows them to have success. I think you saw Moses go down to the G League and just tear it up, which allowed him to gain that confidence. And, whether that's Juan Toscano Anderson or Damian Lee, I mean, we have used the G League as well as anybody in the league. Give all the credit to ownership group with that, allowing the financial resources to be able to do that. So we're not afraid of it. We know that's reality. It's always going to be youth. Everybody's going to look for upside. But even as we look at this draft, whether we're picking 27 or 28, wherever we end up, the beauty of this is we've drafted older, younger, middle, international. We've done all those things in the first round. So we have a flavor for a little bit of all of it, and we're not afraid of taking any of it. If we feel like an older guy can help us and win next year, but in 4 years, the guy that we didn't pick is going to have a higher upside, we're okay with it because there's a decision we made internally and we evaluated everything and thought that was the right thing to do. Or we're going to take an upside guy that won't be ready in 2 years, put him in the G League, develop him there, and then all of a sudden you may be able to be somebody like Jordan Poole. You may be able to be somebody like Damian Lee, Juan Toscano Anderson.
Last one. And you're so thank you so much for coming on, by the way. This has just been so good. Warrior fans are going to absolutely love this when they catch this. Two-parter on the last one. Give me your thoughts on Steph physically coming into this series. I'd almost feel remiss if I didn't ask you about Steph. He's the face of the franchise. We've done this whole breakdown. We haven't talked about Steph, but how's he looking coming into this series physically? And then the theme that kind of has been kind of gnawing at me as a Warrior fan this year, Lair, is that finishing has been an issue all season. And I can't really put my finger on why. It's like you guys will get up 15, and then all of a sudden, there's still a sequence where the team's coming back against you, and they're making a game of it. The team's had a hard time just putting teams away. Give me your quick thought on those two fronts: Steph's health and the ability to finish.
Well, I mean, I don't want to get people too excited or too low or whatever. I mean, the fact that you're reading what I'm reading, right? That he's been working out today. They had another scrimmage to see how that goes. I saw Draymond's podcast. Obviously, Steph's mindset is I'm going to play in this series. I want to play in game one. So between you and me and where we're talking right now, I don't know where that's at, but I would think if I'm a bet man, Steph's going to play in the series. When, I don't know. But unless there's a setback today in the scrimmage or tomorrow that he feels some pain or whatever, then that obviously would change my trajectory, opinion about where he's going to be. But he's tough. That's all I know. And I know he wants to play. And I'm telling you, from what I saw in the podcast with Draymond, he's like, I live for this. This is what it's all about. I think he enjoys the fans at Chase so much that he doesn't want to miss an opportunity to play in front of them. And this is the first playoff game ever in Chase Center. There's certain points in his career, things he'll remember. And I just think that this is a focal point. If he's healthy enough to play, he's going to play. As far as, the end of games, I think like anything else, everybody can critique, where can we get better at this? I would say three things have probably led to some of the things you're alluding to. Is I think first and foremost is continuity. I think the fact of the guys missing the big three not playing together, but 11 minutes, I think that would help at the end of games. So you haven't had those three guys. Now they say, Larry, well, that can't just be the answer. Well, that's one of them. And it's a major one. If those three were playing for 62 or 70 games and we still had all these issues, then I think we'd have more to talk about. But the things that from a basketball perspective, even if those three guys were playing, I think our Achilles heel always has been turnovers, and just the way we play and how we play is always going to be that. I think when you look at turnovers, and then lastly is, I will have to say, because Draymond gave it to me, I didn't come up with, is just discipline defensively. if we stay disciplined defensively and don't turn the ball over with the firepower we have and experience we have, the end of games won't be a problem.
Yeah. Draymond, by the way, on the podcast said, and Steph agreed, that the 73-win Warriors were the best team ever, despite losing to LeBron in the finals. If you say to me, best team ever, now I didn't see the Sixers of the 60s. I remember when I do the show with Gary Radnich, he would always bring up the Sixers in the 60s. I saw the 83 Sixers. I thought they were one of the greatest teams I've ever seen. The Bulls team with Jordan that won 72 games was one of the greatest teams I've ever seen. The Showtime Lakers might have been one of the greatest teams I've ever seen. The mid-'80s Celtics are definitely on that list. I'm not sure. I'm not skilled enough as a basketball evaluator to tell you who the best team ever is. But what do you think? I mean, if you built a whole career on this, is that 73 win Warrior team the best team ever? Or if they're not, who's on your short list, Larry?
Yeah, statistically, you say yes. I will say this, that run was fantastic. I mean, I don't think anyone will ever break it. Even as well as Phoenix played this year, they didn't even come close to it, right? I mean, 9 losses is just, think about all the things that have to go well. Just the whole team itself. Is it the best? I don't know that. You mentioned some great teams. I think, and not to punt the question, but I would say how I would answer that. It's hard for me to say in different years, in different generations, right? I mean, you just think of the Lakers and you're like, okay, we're going to guard Magic at 6'9" as a point guard, and we're going to guard Kareem. And then you're going to go, okay, we got Scotty and Michael and Tony Kukoc. And you just start thinking and Rodney, you start thinking about the names, and yet,
Harper.
Okay, who's going to guard Steph and Clay and Draymond? Who are going to guard those guys? I will say this, that knowing our guys, they would love for that battle to ever take place. But I think it's a great conversation piece because they're just the style of game was different. What rules are we playing with, right? Are we able to just handle guys in the post? Or we have freedom of movement, right? Yeah. I mean, it was a bloodbath down there. You would know Detroit and Chicago. I mean, they had Jordan rules for a reason. It was basically a bloodbath. They should have just put an iron fence around or a cage and just said, go at it. So our game was not that way, right? I mean, we play a different style. Not that we weren't physical enough. We could have handled that, but just a different style, officiated differently. So it's hard to say, but those 4 or 5 teams, I mean, the Boston teams, the LA teams, that Philly team was great. Chicago team's great. Even Houston with Akeem, those teams. I mean, David Robinson and Tim Duncan with that team. I mean, so I like our spot as in the conversation, which is great. Because I work for the Warriors, I'd say yes, and I was a part of it. I'd say absolutely,
good
yes,
answer,
right? But it'd be unbelievable, right? I mean, you could never do it, but wow, wouldn't it be exciting to be able to take on the '95 Bulls? I mean, it'd be unbelievable.
It'd be an incredible show.
Right.
Larry, congratulations on an incredible career you've had in basketball. And thanks for stopping by the Krueg Show and helping us preview the playoffs and talking all this Warrior basketball. There's so many Warrior fans that will digest this in the next few days by going to YouTube and checking it out. And you rock, brother. We love talking ball with you, man. You're lucky I'm not hanging around the facility because I'd be wasting your time all the time asking you questions. No. But you're awesome. You're awesome. And please come back at some point. But thanks to Ray Ritter. Thanks to all the people with the Warriors. Good luck starting Saturday with the Nuggets. And as I say, you rock, man. You're tremendous. I could pick your brain on basketball on every level, and we could do it for hours. But I do appreciate your time. I know it's valuable. Thanks for coming by.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Thanks for having me. I've always enjoyed the conversations. If you want to do it when we get into the finals, be glad to go. We'll talk about the 3 previous series we won and who will be playing in the finals. It'd be great.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
That's a date.
Appreciate you having me. And again, it's been an honor to work for this organization. The people that I work with are great. I want the fans to know that we have an ownership group that's committed to win at every level. We don't cheapen anything, and we're going to do everything we can every year, no matter the cost, to be able to put a team out there that can win a championship, not just get in the playoffs, not just be a contender. And that's our motto in the front office. So thank you for having me. Best of luck, obviously, to the Warriors and all the Warrior fans. Have faith. Even if there's a game lost here or there, it's still a 7-game series. Don't know if we'll sweep them all, but I'm confident with our 3 guys that we have a chance to get back to the finals.
Hey, it's going to be a ton of fun. And thanks again for your time. Have a great rest of your day, Larry.
All right. Thanks, Larry. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Larry Harris, Warriors assistant GM, stopping by. All right, let's just thank our sponsors here, and we'll call it a wrap on this show. Telmetrics is one of our sponsors, and if you're an orthopedic surgeon, an occupational therapist, a chiropractor, a physical therapist, Telmetrics is designed for you to use in your practice and will greatly benefit your patients. Telmetrics uses computer vision and artificial intelligence and provides a platform for outpatient rehab therapy services, both in clinical and telehealth environments. Using Telmetrics can improve your patient's experience and much more. So, for all your sports injury and physical rehabilitation specialists, for all you, be sure that you go to Telmetrics.co. And thanks to Casey Bateman and the good people at Telmetrics. And also thanks to Dan Coach Emilio, who's a sponsor of our show as well. Dan is a retirement planning specialist. You can find him online at securemoney.com. And you can also give him a call right now, 925-628-9966. We're in uncertain times and all that's going on in the world today. You want to put your money where it's safe for your retirement, where it's secure. And with 25 years of experience and born and bred in the Bay Area, Dan Coach Emilio can help you get an immediate 10% premium bonus on your principal retirement account. Give him a call today for an appointment. Once again, 925-628-9966. And make sure you're putting your money where it is secure. Once again, Dan Coach Emilio, retirement planning specialist at securemoney.com. Once again, the phone number, 925-628-9966. Danny is a Warrior fan, Giants fan, Niner fan, great guy. And if you just want to, check out Danny and see him talk, we did an interview with him that lives right here on the Krueg Show channel. Just go into the archives and check it out, and you can hear Dan in his own words and see what a great guy he really is. So thanks to Dan and all the good people at securemoney.com. All right, we bring our producer back in. Oh, wait, there we go, Ryan. And see, look for Ryan. I can play this little game. Back and forth. What do you think of Larry Harris?
Oh man, that was a phenomenal interview. You pretty much hit everything, and I actually didn't even see, just because I was getting ready for the show, I didn't see the Steph news dropped where Shams Charania basically said, it's likely that he's going to be back, and barring any setbacks or whatever. But yeah, I love the way that guy talks ball.
He's so sharp. And, now we got a rooting interest. Warriors have to beat Denver, and then they got to beat Memphis in that second round. They got to beat Phoenix. And if they do that, then we're getting Larry Harris back to preview the finals. And that's cool. That's cool because he's been a guy that we've had on KMBR for years. And he's just a guy. He's just a guy who knows the game, second generation NBA talent evaluator. And it was really cool to hear him go into all the different aspects that go into it. I thought on the advanced work, I thought that answer was really interesting. How they break it all down, then they bring it to the players and bring it to the coaching staff. I mean, just think about all the, they played 4 times this year. You got all the statistical breakdown. You got the analytics department. You got the personnel evaluation. You got the health situation. How healthy is everybody? How are they playing this month? How are they playing this week? I thought that was really interesting because Larry does college scouting and international scouting, but it's a different game being an advanced scout. And I thought he kind of painted that picture for us. It was really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way he was so honest about everything, in his, as honest as he can be as, a member of the Warriors organization. But, talking about Poole, he was honest. He was like, look, it seems like he matured. He took that next step and, started busting his butt. And, of course, that summer league, the G League bubble thing, everyone knows, that really seemed to increase his confidence. But he's like, look, we're all going to be watching and we're going to be, really looking at him when he's performing in the playoffs because it's a different level. Every player's scouted for every game. And, he's got a year and a half until his deal's up. So, I think it's going to be interesting.
It's going to be interesting. On the text line, we've got this comment. Also, are the Warriors also preparing for a potential Jamal Murray return? How worried would the Warriors be, or how stale would Murray be? That's an interesting one. I in my mind, Rye, I had kind of put in a line through Jamal Murray, like, don't worry about Jamal Murray. But I read last night that Murray may come back in these playoffs and it may even be in this first round. I'm not banking on that, and I can't imagine he would have a huge impact, but he is a tremendous player. And that to me is maybe one of the wild card factors to kind of look for in this Warriors Denver series, which begins Saturday, is, what does it look like? What does it look like? What does Denver look like if they can add Murray to the mix? I mean, he's a great young guard.
Yeah, I don't even want to think about that. I mean, the last time we saw him, I mean, yeah, it was in the bubble, but God, he was what? It was like him and Mitchell were just trading like 45-point games back and forth. That was scary. But yeah, I have no idea what is the Warriors lineup going to even look like? Are we starting Poole? Are we going Poole, Clay, Steph? Like we haven't seen this at all this year. And then my God, Looney is going to be, after all he's done this year. I love the guy, but God, now he's got to bump with Jokic for a whole series.
Is Michael Malone going to play Hack-a-Looney? Tommy Huxley's paying your salary here. He says he's made a donation. He says the chef is in the building. Go Dubs. Tommy, thanks for the donation, and we'll make sure Ryan gets that. Good stuff, though, man. I think that's going to do it for us. An hour long. We should tell people and remind them that we will be with you Saturday night. Cyrus Satsis from the Locked On Warrior podcast will join us for post-game on Warriors. So our schedule on Saturday, I think the Giants play the Guardians early in the day. We'll do a little pregame going into the Warrior game, just a short, brief post-game, I should say, for the Giants. We'll do a little Giants post-game on Saturday, just a brief one. Then we'll sit down and watch the Warriors, and then we'll kind of do a combination post-Giants, post-Warriors, and Cyrus will join us from Locked On Warrior podcast in the post game for that. And you'll, of course, be, Ryan's is joining us from the Adam Carolla podcast and will be front and center for basically everything that we do going forward, and lots of new things on the horizon. So Ryan, we're excited to have you as part of our mix here with Len Dempsey and myself and you and onward and upward, and great stuff lies ahead for everybody.
Yeah, I'll have a better background pretty soon.
How's that elbow, by the way?
Oh my God.
Ryan's got bursitis on the elbow, and Joe Montana one time had bursitis on the elbow, and the thing just got huge. It was just like this big bulbous thing. Are you on the mend, my friend?
So yeah, I mean, it was like the size of a grapefruit, and they drained it, and they were like, it's gonna feel much better, and you're gonna be cool. Didn't get any better, and I started getting like fevers and stuff, and it turned out that it's MRSA, which is like
in the joint.
Super staph infection. So
you're taking those horse pills now.
Yeah, I'm glad I got it drained now though, because I would have been like on an episode of Dr. Pimple Popper or something.
That's the most disgusting show of all time. That show, I'd almost take a pass the hat, get a collection and take that thing off the air. Oh my God. If you ever stumbled onto Dr. Pimple Popper, you're like, oh my God, turn the channel as fast as possible. There's nothing grosser than that show. All right, brother. Good stuff. We'll see you soon. Thanks, Derek.